On May 18, 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed one of the most important bills of his presidency, the Tennessee Valley Authority Act. Proposed by Senator Norris of Nebraska, the act marked the end of a heated battle over what to do with the remnants of two incomplete nitrate manufacturing plants and a hydroelectric dam constructed by the U.S. government during World War I near Muscle Shoals, Alabama. While the act had been proposed on multiple occasions to Congress unsuccessfully, the climate of the 1930s, coupled with the support of President Roosevelt, persuaded Congress to pass the bill. The Tennessee Valley Authority had several aims, but the central unifying goal was to promote the economic recovery of one of the most depressed regions in the country. The first people to be affected by the authority were those living in and around Cove Creek. The dam would be responsible for the removal of 3,000 families, but would employ many more in the depressed region. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt desired to elevate the forgotten people economically and socially through the huge works projects of TVA. There is much debate today, though, concerning how effective TVA actually was in the Valley, and countless celebrations, evaluations, and critiques of the Tennessee Valley Authority exist to explore this sole issue. All overshadow the people of the Valley, making the common man obsolete. I am blessed to have family members who are able to provide personal accounts of the Valley during its transition from pre-TVA to post-TVA. It is my hope that this short documentary will provide a voice for the common man, as well as preserve a small portion of history, my history. In 1903, Francis Marion Davis, my great-great-grandfather, purchased a tract of land in Claiborne County's 3rd District. His son, J. Judson Davis, would marry approximately 18 years later a local girl named Essie Alberta Grubb. This is the photo of the day they eloped, and behind them is the car they were married in. Yes, they were married in a Model A Ford because great-grandfather Davis was too nervous to get out of the car. Their only son would grow into the man known to me as Papaw. Next, we have Jesse and Myrtle Tiller of LaFollette, Tennessee. Hardships during the Great Depression would encourage them to pack up their family and move to Cove Creek, where my great-grandfather played an important role in the construction of the Norris Dam and later served in the powerhouse. My papa was born Francis Milton Davis in Maynardsville, Tennessee, 1928. He was only a small boy when his family lost his farm, but he was able to provide me with a full account of his family's migration from Maynardsville to Strawberry Plains, Tennessee.
We had a farm over on Clinch River. Had two of them, one on each side of the river. It was between Maynardsville and Tazewell. Out there on you had to cross the river to get to Tazewell. Of course, we was on the side where Maynardsville was at. So the road that went from Maynardsville to Tazewell, right there at the end of the bridge was where Grandpa had his store.
My husband, Judson, well, his daddy had been in the store since he was a little boy.
Oh.
And he helped his daddy. And so the store just came on down through the family. Judson, he helped his daddy as long as we lived over there in Union County.
And so, of course, everybody going up and down the road and everybody around there would come over there and trade with Grandpa. He knew everybody around. I mean, he'd been there for a long time. And everybody around there, they didn't have much money, but they would work on the farm for so much, or they would bring stuff in to trade for money. I mean, for the groceries, I guess you'd say.
Had dry goods, overalls for men, jackets, thread, and bolts of material, and the sugar, both kinds of sugar came in barrels. This big barrel you had to dip it out in your bag and weigh it, and that's where the crackers were. And it's just in big books, It wasn't just a package you just handed out to them. And they brought all kinds of things to pay for the groceries. like even ginseng, chickens, eggs, corn, and money.
Down the river, a lot of people had pearls, real nice pearls, and he'd take them in and for so much, and they would get their tobacco, as they called it, to chew. Everybody over there chewed tobacco, and they'd get their flour and meal and stuff to eat. He would just do anything to help them out. The people around there, you know, they didn't have too much. Several people around us just didn't have no farm, didn't have anything. They just worked for people that would hire them, and they didn't go nowhere to get the job. Some of them went to Detroit and tried to work up there in the cars, you know, up there. Some of them went up there, and some of them went up there and stayed for maybe a month or so and come back. They didn't like it.
My Mamaw had a very different life growing up. Born in 1932, Jerry Tiller lived in La Follette, Tennessee before moving to Norris. Her father later moved the family to Jefferson City.
Mother, when she was only 15 years old, she worked as a telephone operator. And that seems amazing now that a 15-year-old could work as a telephone operator. And that was not in Norris, but it was in probably La Follette or Jellicoe, which is where they were from originally. And she had to wear the big muffs over, or what I call them muffs, over her ears. And they had the board where you plug things in and out where the telephone calls came in. But after she married and the children and all, like, she didn't work. She worked at home. As most young married women and older ones, that's what they did. They were stay-at-home mothers. Before any of the rest of us were born, she had twins, and a girl and a boy. And the little boy died pretty shortly after he was born. And the little girl was, I don't know what was wrong with her, but she was disabled in some way. And I believe she lived until she was about 4 years old. And we had a picture of her, and she looked like she was a pretty little girl. But they died before any of us were born. And my oldest sister is 18 months older than I am, and then I had a younger sister, 4 years younger, and she passed away about several years ago. We had cousins and aunts and uncles, but most of them lived in La Follette and Jellicoe, because that's where my daddy was born in La Follette. My mother was in Jellicoe. I had a great aunt who lived in La Follette, and she helped out with the family a lot, my dad's family, because they were poor. And his daddy was sick a lot. His mother died young, and he basically had to help with his, he had a brother and a sister, younger brother and a younger sister, and he basically had to just help feed them and take care of the family. When he got older, he started working in a fast food place, I guess we'd call it now, and he wasn't really all that old, but he just had to help the family, and so he was always a good cook, and I guess that's how he learned to cook, was from that. And my great aunt, they named me after her, and my name is a deep, dark secret. It's my first.
For people in the Tennessee Valley, life during the Great Depression wasn't much different from life prior to October 29, 1929. Poverty was a constant companion of many Valley people. The majority of the Tennessee Valley was agricultural, and the average farmer was incredibly poor. In 1930, the average farmer's income did not exceed $230, an amount that farmers would not see again until after 1950. The average farm value was approximately $6,000 less than the national average. What was responsible for all of this poverty? Three primary factors: ignorance, poverty, and overpopulation. A disproportionate number of farmers in the valley were not knowledgeable of modern sophisticated farming practices or technology. Farmers planted similar crops year after year without fertilizing the soil. This left the soil exposed in winter, and erosion eventually destroyed the land to the point that 1/5 of all soils in the valley were classified as submarginal. For those farmers who understood their practices were outdated, few were able to financially afford equipment and fertilizer. Furthermore, the region's overpopulated land alone allowed the average farmer less land to cultivate than the average national farmer.
And I look back now, well, they didn't what fertilizer was. I don't reckon. I don't remember ever putting any fertilizer on any ground or anything like that. Just wore the ground out. Just kept putting. They put it in corn. They put it in corn every year. But of course they did those bottoms over there, and those bottoms would overflow, from the settlements would be real rich, they didn't have to fertilize anything. Like that over there, where they just all they raised was corn along the bottoms. And so that next year, the river would get up over those bottoms and leave settlements there, And so there's what they used for fertilizer, I reckon. When they moved over here in '35, Daddy started farming this farm we got here now. We had then, of course, we started fertilizing it. It's all upland. We farmed a mule for several years before we ever bought a tractor. We'd have, 6 or 8 mules. I plowed them all day long myself, mowed hay with them. Windy day was bad for the mow. The hair would come off and come right back in your face. You hire one way and you're glad you turn around and mow the other way.
TVA sought to educate the Valley farmer of the importance of fertilizer, crop rotation, and modern technology under the leadership of TVA Director Harcourt Morgan. Programs were begun to introduce new crops and practices. Electricity slowly appeared on the farms as well as tractors and other farm machinery. All of these initiatives were positive. However, they proved to be insufficient to raise the average farmer to the national level. It would be decades before the Valley farmer would be competitive on a national scale. The Tennessee River stretches 800 miles, following a windy path up and down and across the state of Tennessee. Along the way, this river and its tributaries drain approximately 7 states. The extreme volume of water carried by this river is enough to rank the Tennessee 4th in the nation. Annually, the Tennessee Valley receives an average of 52 inches of rainfall, 80 inches in some parts, which contributed to the great floods as far away as Mississippi prior to TVA. In contrast, there were months when the Tennessee River and its tributaries would be so low that they would be impossible to navigate. When TVA came to the valley, it strategically constructed dams along the river and connecting streams to regulate the water level and prevent extreme flooding. The first dam to be constructed was Norris on the Clinch River, upstream from my grandfather's family farm.
Clinch River, it was considered a small river, and so it had what they call shows. Rocks come up to the top. It wasn't very deep. The river wasn't very deep. Those shows really rocky, and you couldn't go over much unless the river was up. Then you go over. Well, the Clinch River was awful bad to overflow, flood, and so one time Grandpa was telling me about it, and he said that the river was so high that he could run a boat through the house, start into front door and go out the back door with a boat. It was that high there. Of course, we live right next to the river. Just a road between us and the river. Just a country road.
While the Clinch River was undoubtedly a devastating force, it was also a tool exploited by the valley people for economic purposes. Examples include pearl cultivation and logging. Members of my family were involved in both ventures.
The river was noted for its pearls, or oysters. Well, they put oysters in mussels. And there's always a bunch of people trying to get those mussels so they could sell the pearls out of them. And Daddy said that they would, and boys would bring in a sack full of pearls. Not just a little bunch, but said he'd seen as much as a gallon bucket at a time. And of course they would give them traded out. They mostly traded. So there was a bunch of people lived right below us there. There was ghosties, and they'd go up and down that river with a tub tied behind them, and throw the mussels in that tub. And as they got home, they pour them out and open them up, and then they would sell the shells to a button factory. They made it.
My family never actually sold the pearls people used to purchase goods with in my great-grandfather's store. I wish I knew where all of the pearls ended up, but a few were developed into jewelry. I know of 3 rings. My mother owns one piece, my great-aunt Phyllis Sue has another, and a distant cousin owns one as well. There was plenty of timber in the Tennessee Valley to be had. To make extra money, men would cut trees on their property and send it down the Clinch River to Chattanooga to sell. The best wood included maple, cherry, and black walnut, which was used in the manufacturing of luxury furniture. The logs also created excellent rafts, which were used in the transportation of goods to market. Iron ore and finished products, mussel shells, and corn are just a few examples.
They took raves down. They cut the timber on the mountains, and on the level land bad, and they would cut these logs, and they would float them out in the river, and they would peg them together, tie them together, and make a raft, maybe as many as 100 logs in a raft, and then they would make them a little place to cook, out of stone. They'd make a little stove on it, and they would get somebody to help them to take these logs down the river. Judson's daddy, he called him a real good raftsman. He took as many as 100 different ones down the river to Chattanooga.
Well, Grandpa, in the wintertime, they would cut logs, and he would take them from over there, go down the river, and end up in Chattanooga. They would say, there'd be a whole bunch of logs, and they'd keep them together some way, nail them together or something. I don't know how they did that, but they'd keep them all together, go down the river, just a big raft of them. And he'd do that. Grandpa would do that in the wintertime. He'd done that for years, and Daddy would stay in the store. And so that's how they made. Of course, Daddy and Mother lived with them. But that's how they made extra money.
Ironically, as the individuals of the valley began their exodus, others were making the Norris area their home. The town of Norris was an example of regional planning, an intended model of the potential of the valley and its people, and the physical realization of TVA director Arthur E. Morgan's utopian society. Morgan desired to increase economic prosperity in the valley without crushing its spirit. He proposed a community with strong small industrial cooperatives. Morgan's ideas were supported by President Roosevelt. A proponent of regional planning, FDR foresaw Norris as a test site and future example for larger national planning. Norris encompassed 4,200 acres. In 1934, construction of the first 300 permanent residences began. Homes would be equipped with electricity and running water. In time, a whole community was built. Norris was the town that my grandmother moved to as a child while her father was employed to work at the Norris Dam.
I don't really remember moving to Norris because I was very small. My sister and I, my mother and father, we lived in a 4-room home, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, and a small back porch. Everybody on our street had the same house. With just maybe a little variation because TVA had built them for TVA employees. It's my thinking that they built all the houses, and the people there rented from them, and they had all the landscaping, the trees and the lawns and everything, so everything was always neat, the sidewalks, and so they wanted everything they wanted everything to look good, and the people that were in the homes were expected to keep things up. I mean, we just did. I mean, we just I guess that's just we just assumed that we were to do that, and so everybody did that.
Schooling for many in the Tennessee Valley was brief and inconsistent. 1/4 of the total population had not advanced further than the 3rd grade. Interestingly enough, social classes, owners and tenants, had similar education levels. Both groups shared a median education of 5.4 years, and only 2% of owners and 1% of tenants possessed a college degree. What is fascinating about education in the Valley to me is the correlation between education and agricultural success. The productiveness of an owner's or tenant's farm grew with the years of education the man had achieved. In the next section, Papa explains briefly his experience at school. This will be juxtaposed with my grandmother's memories from her school in Norris.
I was going to school. We went down to Mineral Springs. It was down the river. We had to walk down the river, and so it just that little road down through there. If you got off it, you'd be in the river, and it stayed muddy all winter long, and you had to just dodge the mud holes best you could. And so I went down there in a 1-room school that taught from 1st grade to 8th grade, I think it was. And so it was just a 1-room school, and you had sulfur water to drink. It smelled like rotten eggs. And that's what we had to drink down there, sulfur water. Whenever school was out, go home, first thing you had to do was go milk cows and stuff like that. Our school helped real late. We didn't get home till the dark. Whenever we got home, we'd go to the barn and feed and milk cows, and then go home and eat supper. All the kids did that. They just had to help.
My grandfather's school was torn down and moved to Maynardsville when the Clinch River was flooded by TVA. In the meantime, TVA was concerned with the construction of its new modern school in Norris. The school at Norris was a $170,000 project. The modern schoolhouse had 20 rooms that served the needs of 400 Norris students, kindergarten through high school, as well as the community. The school at Norris became an important factor in the development of education in the surrounding counties. The University of Tennessee held workshops in the buildings for educators of Anderson, Union, Claiborne, Campbell, and Granger counties. Innovative teaching techniques observed in the schools were incorporated into the curriculum in the aforementioned school systems. Furthermore, the school housed the adult education programs at Norris.
We had a wooded area behind our house, and I could walk through the woods to my school. I don't really know if they had transportation or not, but I remember at one time walking through the woods, and I'm sure my sister was probably with me unless she ran off and left me, which she could have done. But I would play like I was Little Red Riding Hood as I walked through the woods. School at that time, I started kindergarten, and I loved kindergarten. It was such a fun time to be. And my kindergarten teacher's name was Mrs. McNaughton, and I can remember her today. And I thought she was an old lady, but I'm sure she wasn't actually very old. It's the May Day program. We had that every year in May, of course, and we always looked forward to it. And we practiced every day. This is when school was going on. And we practiced every day. And on the day of the program, while they would put up a big pole, and we would have ribbons made out of crepe paper strung from the pole. Somebody had it at the very top. Of course, it looked tall to me. It may not have been, but it looked tall to me. And we would practice going weaving in and out each other's back and forth to music. And then when it was finished, the crepe paper ribbons would be tied around the maypole. Well, on the day of the program, our mothers would have made us all costumes made out of crepe paper. And we would have different colors in pink and green and blue, and it was really pretty. And that was just something that we all enjoyed.
$239 square miles were purchased for the Norris Dam. 153,000 acres of farmland that had once been family property for generations have been transferred to government ownership. The 14,000 inhabitants of the area were not overly happy to lose a piece of their lives, but many accepted TVA's forced removal from the valley. There was no other choice. Leonard White of Union County was in elementary school when his family became displaced, but his words captured the emotions of the people.
From this valley we soon will be leaving. How we miss our old friends in our home, for they say that the water will cover where we all love to roam. They are the aged-old fathers and mothers who have spent many years here in toil. They have reared up the happy little children on the products of old Clinch River soil. But their happy days here will soon be over. They must seek now to find higher ground. But with all this wide world spread before us, where can such a happy home be found? While it's sad for us to leave our old home site, we go filled with joy to know that we're holding the angry rolling waters from our brothers and sisters below.
It ran everybody out because it backed that creek up. From this creek that we lived on, Straight Creek, emptied into Clinch River. And it's backed it right up. The house is up on a hill and just slanted down into the creek, and the bottom land down there. And but it wouldn't have got the house, and wouldn't if he had about 100 acres that went on up on Walden's Ridge. It was slanted. You wouldn't have gotten up there, but you couldn't get out. You see. That dam water cut us off.
TVA come there and said we was going to have to move, and so they come in hunting us another farm. And, so they took Daddy around to different places, trying to pick out a farm that he wanted. So he picked this one out here where we lay. Of course, his sister lived right down the road from it, so I guess he was considering that, I guess. As we was moving, this creek, had to cross this creek, Bull Run Creek. It's still there. Still runs. And so we got out in the middle of it, and it drowned out the car. So there we sat, and Mother got real panicky. And of course, us kids didn't know what it was all about, you know. And so they finally got us out. This guy on the other side, he waded out in there or something. I don't know how he ever got a rope hooked to the bumper or something, and he pulled us on out. When we did buy this farm, Mother come over here and looked at the house, and she went back. She said she wasn't going to live in it. What it was there was a tenant lived in it, and he just didn't care how they lived. Evidently, had the wall paper with newspapers, and there's a bunch of pigs running around the yard and up on the porch and every other way, Daddy said. I never did come over here until they had it fixed up. But then, whenever he got fixed up to where he thought she'd live in it, he went back and got all of us and her. We moved over here and started farming over here and raising cattle. We raised cattle and tobacco and just anything to make a living, I guess you'd say they did. I don't know. I was kind of young at it. Eventually I grew up and had to farm. I farmed ever since I remember anything. And then I started milking cows by hand. We milked about 10 or 12 cows by hand twice a day, and that would put a muscle on you.
To TVA's credit, steps were taken to aid the families living in the valley during the relocation process somewhat. The agency responsible for the process was the Resettlement Administration. Members of the administration allegedly worked diligently to procure land of an equal size to the property lost for the families being removed. Only roughly 60% of those living in the valley owned property, though. The other 30% were tenants, sharecroppers, or squatters. None of these people were entitled recipients of aid or compensation from TVA. Furthermore, a disproportionate number of dispossessed families resettled on submarginal, overpopulated rural areas similar to the environment they were forced from. Those TVA did not help were in a tough position. Many were forced to find work on another farm, in another town, up north, or to apply for work at TVA along with thousands of other desperate citizens. In order to gain employment through TVA, applicants were required to complete an examination at one of 50 sites scattered across 5 states: Kentucky, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, and East Tennessee. All applicants, regardless of profession, were administered the same examination. If selected, applicants were interviewed and then chosen to work. One fact that TVA is particularly proud of is that it functioned as a nonpartisan employer. Political affiliation of applicants was overlooked and never requested. But what was most important to Director Arthur E. Morgan was the moral character of TVA employees. In his opinion, a man of high moral standing trumped a highly skilled applicant regardless of experience.
Of course, this was still a depression, and I didn't know about the depression. It didn't bother me because I had food to eat, and I don't remember having lots of clothes or anything, but I was too young. Those things didn't matter to me that much. But he got a job with TVA, and he was worked inside the powerhouse. It had to do with something about the big machines. Just watching them and seeing that everything was going smoothly. And there were several men in there, and of course they were friends. We were friends with their families. The TVA people, as we called ourselves, became friends, and even when we moved to another place, we continued to be friends. I can remember a lot of things about my dad because he was very creative. He made things. He made a swing, one of those kind that you put your feet on the floor. It had a swing on each side, and then the ones on each side in each side of the swing would push and make it go back and forth. And he made that, and he made some chairs that we sat in the back yard or in the front, and what I called a little city. I don't know what it was made out of, but it was tiny little houses he made out of, made for it, and little trees, and he put something for the yard, and he put painted it or dyed it and green, and he had little tiny cars that he would put on the road, and he had a sidewalk. It was just the neatest thing, and I really wanted to play with it because I was great for playing with dolls and paper dolls and all those things, so I really wanted to play with it. But he worked a long time on that, so I just would go in and look at it. And he probably told us not to bother it because it was made out of something soft. Well, one time though, I went in and I was looking at it, and I just guess the devil got into it through me, and I reached up there with my finger or my thumb, and all I was going to do was just touch that green lawn and see what it felt like. Well, it was much softer than I thought, and I touched it a little too hard and made my print in it. And oh, I was so sorry that I had ruined that, and I just felt so bad about it. But I didn't tell Daddy. I didn't tell Daddy I'd done it. And of course he knew I had, because I was the one that would go in there and look at it. But he never did fuss at me, and never did say anything about why I did it or anything. And every time I'd go in there, I'd see that thumbprint there. It made me feel bad. But I just always wondered what happened to those things. I'd love to have them again.
Unfortunately, Norris never developed into the self-sufficient town envisioned by Arthur E. Morgan. When construction of the dam ended, workers and their families left to be hired at future TVA sites. Norris today exists as a small, quiet community ideal for the individual who works in Knoxville but enjoys the atmosphere of a small town.
I was just tiny when we moved there, and I was about 9 years old when we moved from Norris to Jefferson City. And I don't know why that was the way it was, but just about all of the people that we knew in Norris that were connected to TVA also moved. So I imagine they were all transferred to the Douglas Dam area. And, yeah, in Cherokee, really. Daddy worked at Cherokee, and so most of them were at Cherokee. And I still know people from Cherokee down in Jefferson City when we were little. They would get transferred, we would call it, and that would be a continuing thing. They would stay in one place for a period of time, and I think I remember the term put in for a transfer. They would want to be transferred for one reason or another. Maybe it was a better position, or something like that. Well, my husband and I made a trip through Norris, and of course it changed like most towns do. And they had a lot of the houses that we went down the streets that I lived on, and the houses were still there, and but most of them had been enlarged. They were bigger, had added on, and but they were fairly still familiar. I guess, in my opinion, that there were a lot of good things about TVA. Because that's what I saw. It gave a lot of people jobs at that time, and I didn't see any of the bad things. I saw only the good things, and that affected me. And so I guess I have a good view of TVA, basically. And as I've grown older, I have seen people have pointed out things that weren't so good, and that's usually the way. There's some good things and some things that aren't so good. But, I think the fact that they gave a lot of people jobs, including my father, and as far as I know, prevented some flooding and gave the help to raise the income of a lot of us, and so I think that's pretty well what I think about TVA.
Okay. Let me see. Any other stories? When did you meet Mamaw?
When did I meet her?
Yeah, when did you meet Mamaw?
When I was a little kid.
You met Mamaw when you were a little kid? My Mamaw?
Oh, you?
My Mamaw. Your wife.
Oh, I met my wife. I met her in 54 and married her in 54. She's right out of college. And we was going to, we'd been square dancing, and I seen her in the square dance, and I thought, that's the one right there. So we square dance. We'd go square dancing 2 or 3 times a week. I like square dance back
Aww. That's cute. That's cute.
Where's she sitting at?
She's in the sunroom. She's prepping for her interview. Yep, she's in there. Now we can have cookies.
You're like the little girl on the TV on the commercial, talking to her grandmother, and she says, "Can we go get ice cream?" Have you seen that?
No.
They're sitting on the benches, different ones of them, and then they say, you know, my grandpa, he spoils me rotten. They baby talk, you know, they can't talk. And then the other one will say, Mamaw is the bestest in the world. And one little girl will say, she'll say something like that, and then she said, when we sit for a while, then we're going to get ice cream. And so then it'll show them that they're going somewhere holding hands. And she said, and are we going to get ice cream now? So you're like that with the cookies. Are we going to have our cookies now?
Yes.
Yes, we are. It'll take about, can you wait 10 minutes?
I can.
It will wait, it'll take about 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.